The Universal Declaration of Human Rights says everyone has the right to an adequate standard of living. It sets out economic and social rights indispensable for human dignity, such as health, education, housing, work, and social security. But every day, millions of people around the world are deprived of these rights. Sometimes, the causes of these deprivations are glaring. For example, when families are forcibly evicted from their homes. More often, the causes of these deprivations are unclear, making it hard to identify who is accountable. They result from a general failure to create the economic and social conditions that allow people to enjoy an adequate standard of living. But governments from all corners of the globe have committed to doing just that. By ratifying international treaties, they have agreed to take steps using the maximum resources available to create an environment where people can enjoy their rights. So how can we judge if governments are doing enough to meet these commitments? Over the past decade, the human rights community has developed innovative approaches, tools and techniques, including collecting statistical evidence to visualize the scope and scale of chronic rights deprivations. This helps to expose injustices that often remain invisible. But numbers alone can only tell us so much. To get the full picture, we need to interpret these numbers against the human rights commitments made by governments. A clear analytical framework can help us do this. The Center for Economic and Social Rights OPERA framework is simple but comprehensive. It groups these commitments around 4 steps, gathering evidence to measure the extent to which each is being met. The first step looks at outcomes for people. We use different social development indicators to identify how many people are deprived of a particular right. For example, what percentage of school-age children receives a primary education. We then ask, does this appear high or low, for example, compared to similar countries? Over time, has progress been rapid or slow, consistent or sporadic? We also look at outcomes for particular groups, for example, girls or indigenous children, to uncover patterns of discrimination. The second step examines the policy efforts of the government. What has it done or failed to do? We start by analyzing relevant laws and policies. On paper, do they provide a genuine plan for realizing rights? In practice, are they being effectively implemented? Do they make the goods and services needed to realize rights more widely available, more accessible to disadvantaged groups, of a higher quality? We also ask, is decision-making participatory and accountable? If not, why not? Data collected by government and by communities helps us answer these questions. Even well-intended policies and programs can be poorly implemented because they don't have enough resources or because resources are mismanaged. In the third step, we assess how governments resource economic and social rights. Do governments generate enough revenue domestically and internationally? Who pays the burden of taxes? How does the government allocate resources? Who ultimately benefits? And do people have a say in the financial decisions that affect them? Finally, we step back to make an assessment of the issue from a broader perspective. We consider whether there are particular socio-economic factors that get in the way of people enjoying their rights, or whether the actions of certain groups, for example, businesses, financial institutions, donors, or other governments, prevent progress. By triangulating the findings from the first 3 steps, the OPERA framework helps identify where reforms are needed. It illustrates the links between the outcomes that people currently enjoy, the policy efforts made by governments, and the way in which resources are raised and spent to make a compelling assessment of the extent to which a government is meeting its human rights obligations. It helps to demonstrate that so-called casualties of underdevelopment may in fact be human rights violations for which governments must answer. In this way, it supports well-evidenced advocacy for greater accountability and positive change in courts, in governments and parliaments, in the media, and in the community. changes that can improve the life opportunities for millions of people around the world and create fairer, more just communities.